So now we're going to start setting up some logic for our server. So the first file that we're going to set up for our servers is our chats file. So let's go ahead and start adding in some of our use statements. So we're going to use async standard task, and then we're actually going to go ahead and start referencing another type in our connection crate, which we will set up a little bit later. And now we're going to also use an atomic reference counter, and we will start using our Tokyo broadcast crate. So as I said, we will implement the leaving type shortly, but we can see that we're now using Tokyo's broadcast. And broadcast is a channel that is going to carry our messages and send them to the members of our chat. So the first thing we need to do is create our chats struct. So we'll create our chat struct and say name arc string, and then we'll have our publisher, which is going to be a broadcast sender arc string as well. So name is going to refer to the chat group, and publisher uses broadcaster sender, which refers to the sending side of the chat's broadcast channel. So with this struct set up, we can now implement a few methods. The first method is going to be new, which is going to create our broadcast channel, and for now we'll just have it set to 1,000 messages. So we're going to implement this. So we have new, and it's going to contain our name, which is a reference counter to a string, and it's going to return a chats. So we'll say let publisher underscore equals broadcast channel, and then 1,000 messages. So broadcast channel is going to return a publisher and a receiver, but we don't care about the receiver, so that's why we just went ahead and put an underscore there. And now we want to return our chat. So as I said, we don't care for the receiver, so that was why we used an underscore. And now our next method is going to be called join. So we'll have join. It's going to have self and a atomic reference counter to a string. And we're going to return chats. So now we're going to create a variable called let receiver equals self dot publisher dot subscribe, and now we will spawn a task and call a sub method, passing in our name, the receiver, and leaving, which we passed in up there. So now we can begin setting up our sub function. So it's going to be an asynchronous function called sub, and we're going to have a chat name of a string, a mutable receiver of broadcast receiver, an atomic reference counter to a string, and then we will also have leaving which is of type leaving. And again, we will implement leaving in a second. So inside here, we're going to have a loop, and we'll break down this function in a second in more detail. So we're going to have receiver dot receive dot await, and then OK, we have a message, server message. So we need to bring our server into scope. Server message, chat name dot clone, and then message dot clone. And then if we receive a certain error, in this case we're going to receive an error of type lagged. So if one of our clients' connection is failing, then we want to be able to handle that. In this case, our server error is going to be dropped X amount of messages from the chat name. Do not need a there. And now we receive an error of receive error closed break. Alrighty. And then if leaving dot send packet dot await dot is error, then break. Okay. So now let's break this function down. We have a loop that is receiving messages from the broadcasting channel, which then transmits them back to the client via a leaving variable. If our client is unable to keep up with the number of incoming messages, so if we're lagging, then it will report back to the client the amount of dropped messages, which is n. If we received a closed error, the loop exits, which will then unsubscribe our user from the chat so that the connection is cleaned up. So overall, it is a pretty straightforward implementation once you just take a second to look at it and really break it down. So now we have one more method that we need to implement up here in chats, and that is post. So we're going to have a reference to ourself and the message, which is of type arc string, and we will say self.publisher.send message. And in this case, we do not care about the return value, so that's why we put an underscore here as well. So now that we have the chats file on the server implemented, we can start working on tracking our chat groups in the next lecture.